Okay, this is welcome to you bought your first horsebow. What do you do with it? Um, so if you paid about $100 for a bow that looks like this online, you can call it a horsebow. You can call it an Asiatic reflex bow. They can market as traditional recurve bows. They're called lots of things. But horsebow is a good name for them because they traditionally were used on horseback, or things that look sort of like this in parts of the world. Um, and let's take a look at what this thing actually is. So this is made out of fiberglass mostly. Fiberglass is what does all the work here. You can't tell because it's wrapped in this beautiful faux leather, um, but which looks traditional because a lot of traditional bows would have been wrapped in leather to protect them from the elements. But anyway, underneath here is a bar of fiberglass, which looks a whole lot like this. So not that pretty. This is an old one that I have lying around from a bow that fell apart. Don't buy Top Archery brand. But yeah, it's a stick of fiberglass, reflexed across a little handle like this, wrapped and sort of served with some cord here, glued, hopefully really well, with sias stuck on the end. So here's the complete bow again. Let's look at the parts. This is the handle. There's a piece of wood under here, or foam or something, wrapped with some faux leather. The fiberglass goes all the way through, and it makes two limbs, but it's one single piece probably. And at the end of each limb, glued on and then wrapped, is a piece of wood called the sia. And the sia does not bend when you bend the bow. The limbs bend, but the sia act as a lever. When you just put your string in the notch here and pull, it gives you a mechanical advantage that allows you to do more work on the limbs, which stores more energy in the limbs without having the draw weight go so high. So it lets a weaker person shoot a more powerful bow by having sias on the end. That's what they do. That's a really short story, but okay. So you're going to wonder, how do you string this thing? It's tricky if you've never done any archery or if you've never messed with horsebows before. There's a couple different ways. The only way I'm going to show you is called step through. First, pick up your string and grab it by the center serving, which is this solid part through the middle. This is one that I've reserved. I did it a long time ago before I knew what I was doing. But determine if there's a long end and a short end, which this one has. So here's the short end on this high side here. The short end is going to be on top because you want the serving to be closer to the top of the bow than the bottom. And this bow has a little arrow pass right here. This is called the arrow pass. And that's also the top. See, mine's all worn away on one side from arrow slap. And finally, this is called the back of the bow. This is called the belly. The belly is toward the archer, and the back is away from the archer. I don't know why it's called that. So you're going to push the. I should have this in like portrait mode, shouldn't I? I don't know. You're going to put your string on the lower notch of the lower limb and push the back of the sia on your front ankle like this. And step over the bow. It's why it's called step through. Turn so I can do this sideways. Alright, there we go. And you put the handle against your thigh. And you can try different angles here. Depends on the length and design of your bow. The handle against the thigh is pretty good. Now you grip the back of your upper sia with your other arm, and you bend the bow like this. And then you loop it on. And you want to go slowly, and you want to watch to make sure that you are putting there we go, the string dead in the middle of the sia. Make sure it's not falling off of the notch. And you should look down after you string your bow look down the length of your bow like this, not like this because you don't want it to hit you somehow, like this, and see that the string is dead through the middle of the cia and runs right down the middle of the limbs. In other words, make sure that you haven't been twisting the bow while you were stringing it. If you have twisted it, you should not do that next time. There's ways to fix string twist or limb twist. I won't cover that right now, but it's not that bad. Better to learn the step-through method with a cheap bow than to like damage some kind of really valuable bow. So I'm going to show you stringing and unstringing a couple more times, and this is something that you should practice. I'll put the cia against my front ankle, and I'll give you a couple angles here. Push forward, it's easier to unstring for sure. You should be able to hold it here pretty comfortably. I guess I'm pretty strong for this bow, but you should feel comfortable taking it on and off, no problem. You might find that wearing thick socks or jeans or something will help you in case your ankle hurts. I have a very heavy bow, and it hurts to do this with my heavy bow, but you know, I just tough it out. And you can also try practicing other leg, no problem there. Step through, and you push it toward. I'm gonna try to get a better angle there. To unstring the bow. So here's where you want to make sure you don't twist the bow. You want to make sure that you're pushing the bow in line. You're not kind of doing this with the bow and pulling it up or pushing it down, but you want to push the bow so that it's bending nice and straight. Slip the string on. And with a little practice, you can do it quite quickly. So, anyway, let me go ahead and string it up. There we go. I'm better with the other leg. This is your strung bow. And it should look about like this. Sometimes bows are asymmetrical or symmetrical, but I'm gonna show you this called the brace height. This is kind of a high brace height. It depends on the bow. The brace height is how far from the belly here of the handle to your string. Although some people measure it from the back of the handle, it doesn't really matter. Some people measure it, like in Korea, it's measured from the limb to the string, totally different number. I actually prefer to measure my brace height from the back of the handle to the string. So this is 20 centimeters. That's kind of average for a horsebow. You could totally put a longer string on here, and then it would actually shrink the brace height, and you'd get a bit more efficiency out of your bow, but it can cause other problems. Or you can get a shorter string, and it would actually lengthen your brace height, which makes it a bit more forgiving to shoot, but you lose some efficiency. It doesn't matter too much. 20 centimeters from the back to the string is pretty normal for a fiberglass bow like this. If they've sent you the right string to go with your bow, it's probably going to work fine. You can actually fine-tune a string to give you a shorter or longer brace height by twisting it more or less before you install the string. I'm not going to worry about that right now. Alright, so here's your bow. I'm going to show two different techniques for shooting. Oh, by the way, you'll notice I'm indoors right now. I do like 90% of my shooting indoors. I shoot every day or two, but I don't go outside very often. I can take my target outside, or I have a friend's house where I go. We shoot outside. I could like get a range membership or something, but it's fun to shoot long distance, but you don't learn much actually, especially early on when you're just starting. The first thing you're going to feel like doing is putting a target on some kind of distant wall, like 10 meters or 20 meters, and plinking arrows at it. It's satisfying and fun, but you actually won't improve your archery much doing that. At least with horsebows. There's so much to learn with form and balance and grip and control and body strength and all these muscle memory things that you can just shoot at a target that is like 1 meter distant. That's how most all of my shooting is done, and that's how in many cultures they train and learn. You know, at least for military historical shooting, you know, they would just stand 1 meter away and just shoot. And this is how you perfect your form. You look in a mirror and watch, or have a coach stand there with you. there's a time and place for shooting long distance as well. It's very fun. So of course you want to go outside and shoot. Okay, so let's see. I have some arrows. I'm not going to talk too much about arrows. You do want to, when you buy a bow, you want to know what the manufacturer says is the maximum draw length. It will depend on like the size, the length that you of string that you have, but the maximum draw length is measured from the back of the bow, the back of the arrow pass here, to the string at maximum draw. And I actually don't know what this one is listed as. They're all listed in inches, unfortunately. So screw inches, but I think this one is listed as like 32 inches, which would be like, I don't know, 80 centimeters maybe, which is a little bit of a short draw for me. Now, if you know anything about Western archery, you're going to say 32 inches, that's really far. That's way farther than most people can draw. That's because you use a very different drawing technique when shooting a horsebow. So if you're familiar with Western archery, you know that they hold the bow this way, and they put the arrow across their knuckle, or often an arrow shelf or something, and they draw sort of with their bicep, and they pull into their mouth. And for somebody my height, that would give me a draw length of like 77 centimeters or something. I don't know what it is. I don't have. But that technique is very good for precision shooting if you don't care about how powerful your arrow is. It'll give you plenty of power for like shooting Olympic distance, which is like a mid-range, 70 meters. Plenty of power to kill most any animal if you're doing hunting, if your bow is strong enough. So that's all that Western shooters really use, is this sort of like weird yanking kind of style. But for horsebows, they were originally intended for military purposes, and for military purposes, you have different requirements. And one of the requirements is that you want a lot of kinetic energy in your arrow. And the way you get a lot of kinetic energy in your arrow is that you get a bow that draws much farther. The longer your draw length allows you to store extra energy in the arrow, which gives you more kinetic energy. That's also why these bows are designed to draw much farther. So, you see Western archers pull to their mouth. They have what's called an anchor point here. Again, I'm not any good at it, so I don't want to demonstrate too much. But with horsebows, you're going to draw back farther to your ear, or even back to your shoulder in some cultures, depending on the bow, depending on the style. A longer draw will give you more power, and these cias here will help you bend the limbs that far, without going too much farther into the physics there. So this is a 85 centimeter arrow, which is like 32.5 inches or something. I'm gonna go ahead and nock it. So first, how do you nock? I'll come back to that later. I'm gonna show you two grips, two bow hand grips. This is your this is your draw hand. This is your bow hand. I'll show you two draw hand grips. So the first one is going to be called modern Slavic, and this is what modern Slavic looks like. You grip your string with two fingers, and you push the arrow against the arrow rest with your index, and then your pinky finger can do sort of anything here. I've seen people with it on the string. It's kind of too short for that though, but it can do whatever you want, but it kind of like hangs loose. Modern Slavic is really good for speed shooting. It's the fastest grip for rapid shooting, and it was grips similar to modern Slavic were used in some cultures in the past, which shot from horseback or shot relatively lightweight bows. It wasn't called modern Slavic then. I don't know why it's called that now. It's easy to learn. It's pretty stable. It's super fast for knocking and shooting rapidly. It's what like Lars Anderson uses. It's kind of a style that he sort of developed. And other people who are doing speed shooting are using a grip very similar to this. But it's not powerful. puts all of the weight on these two fingers here of the draw. So for a big heavy bow, it's gonna just like rip holes in your fingers if you shoot too many times, or it's gonna stretch your joints. It's not powerful enough. This will be the weak point in your draw if you're shooting a very heavy bow, like a war bow, like I have over here. I would never use a grip like this. It'd be impossible to shoot my strong bows with the modern Slavic, but it's awesome for rapid shooting. So I'm going to show you a draw like this. This bow is very light. I think this one's rated as 35 pounds at 28 inches. They're always rated at 28 inches for the Western market, at least. Korean bows are rated at 31 inches. But this one has a 35-pound draw at 28 inches, which is pretty light. But it's great for practicing something like modern Slavic because it won't hurt your fingers. Let me show you how quickly I can knock these on. So I practice shooting quickly from a back quiver. There, just like that. That's with modern Slavic. So there are different ways to quickly nock a bow, but the most important thing when you're nocking an arrow is to place the arrow against the arrow pass first and then attach it to the string. So you'll see people, like when they first start shooting, they'll take the arrow and like they'll turn their bow any direction that they want, and they'll sort of like worry the nock on, and then they'll get everything lined up, and that's messy. So never ever attach your arrow to the string first. Whatever style you shoot, I don't care if you're shooting Western style either. Always put the arrow against the arrow pass, grip it with your bow hand, and then attach it to the string. There's some different ways to do it. What I was showing you is a very rapid style. And you grip the arrow like this with your thumb on top and your index finger beneath, and the nock goes. Let me stand over here. This is a terrible shot, but the nock goes above the crease in your index finger, and that lets you guide it on without having to look. Slides along your thumb. The string slides along your thumb, and the nock goes right on, and that allows you to nock an arrow very quickly without looking, which is good. You don't want to look at your arrow when you're shooting. You want to always look at the target. It's not the most stable, so if you really want a stable way to attach an arrow to a string, which is commonly used in cultures that were riding on horseback a lot, they did what's called a funnel or push funnel. So you could draw the arrow from anywhere, from a back maybe, although they generally would pull from a hip. You could pull from your other hand if you have arrows in your bow hand, or from your draw hand. But you always push the arrow against the arrow pass, and you grip it like this. And you can kind of line it up here if you need to, without looking at the arrow again. And you push it forward, and your thumb slips past the string here. Push it forward. I never use this technique, by the way. This is a very good technique, especially if you're using thumb draw and if you're worried about stability, like if you're on a horse. This is a very traditional, like Chinese way to nock an arrow. It's with this kind of funnel push. This is what most people use if you watch other YouTubers. But I prefer this kind of pull, which is less stable, but is super, super fast. I use this for if I'm doing Slavic or if I'm doing thumb draw. All right. So that was Slavic draw. I also want to show you thumb draw, which is how I shoot most of the time. With thumb draw, you can nock the arrow in the exact same way. I'm not going to give you a big tutorial on thumb draw because I think I'm good at it, but I'm not a good teacher of thumb draw, and there's a lot of videos out there. But you place your thumb below the arrow and just touching. Some people have it not touching. There's different styles here, but for me, just touching. And then the thumb is at a 90-degree angle, and you grip the thumb with one finger like this, or possibly 1.5 fingers. You relax the other 2 fingers of your hand. You can even like carry something over here like more arrows, and you draw. And then when you're ready to release, you lift your 2 fingers, and release your thumb at the same time in the kind of snapping motion, and the arrow goes. And it's an awesome way to shoot. It's big fun. I'm much more comfortable with thumb draw than I am with Slavic. And thumb draw is a way that gives you a cleaner release. It's also extremely strong and stable. Your thumb is stronger than those other 2 fingers put together, especially if you use a thumb ring. We have 2 thumb rings. This one is a Turkish style. It's very slender. And this one is a late Chinese style. Definitely beefier. Either one, and there's other styles as well. There's thumb rings from tons of different cultures. It was used all over the steppes and the Middle East and the Far East and all up and down. The thumb ring goes on your thumb like this, and it gives you like way more strength. It will attach here below the arrow. And you'll draw and release. I rarely use this Turkish one anymore. I don't like it for very heavy bows, although it's capable of pulling heavy bows for sure. But I had an injury on my thumb, a bad cut on my thumb unrelated to archery, and I was unable to shoot at all with a thumb ring for quite some time. And then when I picked it back up, I could no longer use my Turkish ring for a while because my hand was hurting, so I just switched to this Chinese ring. And I've never switched back. I like it more. So the Chinese ring is a bit different because the string fits in this little groove right here on your ring. It's called a shallow hook ring, and it leads you to an extremely clean release. See that? As soon as your thumb moves a little bit, the arrow slips right back off, which can feel a little bit disconcerting when you're first learning. But this ring feels extremely strong. I can pull tons of weight, never hurts, no pain in my thumb. These rings are made out of steel, by the way. You can get plastic ones, or bone, or wood, or horn, but steel is probably the best. Or steel works great. It's not very historical, I think. So here's another thumb ring shot. Look at the camera here. You'll notice my arrows are bouncing off sometimes. I have this mat tuned for heavy bows, so a lot of times this bow won't even put an arrow into it. That's okay. So that's 2 different styles of shooting. You can do modern Slavic, or you can do thumb shooting with or without a ring. You need a ring if you're shooting anything more than like 25 kilos, I'd say. So this bow you don't need a ring. You can just shoot it bare thumbed, but higher than that I would use a ring. So on to a little bit of shooting technique. First of all, when I draw, I'm going to switch back to Slavic, since if you don't have a thumb ring, you're probably going to be shooting with something like Slavic style. Especially if you're interested in speed shooting like Lars Anderson. That's what got you into horsebows. When you draw a war bow like this, and you're knocking it on the thumb, or so you know, resting it on the thumb and not on the backside like you would with Western target archery. But when you're knocking a horsebow, which is designed as a weapon of war, it's good to use a form that is appropriate for strong bows and long pulls. Even if you're starting with a lightweight bow, it's good to use a good form. And there's video. I'm going to link some other YouTubers that have great content about this. I'll give you a very short rundown. At full draw, your elbows should make a straight line across your shoulders. You should not see this, for example, or this, or this. Your elbows should make a straight line across your shoulders, roughly. Of course, if you do that, your bow will be pointed upward. So this is why you see horsebow archers or war archers of any type leaning toward their target. This means that at full draw, you still have this straight line across the top of your body, but you're on target. That's why you lean forward with a war bow or a horsebow, basically at all. And when you draw, there's lots of different ways to start a heavy draw like this. But when you draw, basically your bow arm starts in basically its final position. And what you're doing is you're rotating your draw arm across the top of your body back to full draw. Again, I'm more comfortable with thumb draw, so I'll show you that one more time. And this is not the bow that I shoot very often, and it has a sort of a short draw length for me. At the end, I'll get my other bow out and show you a little bit of a longer draw. I don't want to break this bow by drawing it too far. Now you'll see that my wrist, elbow, and arrow are all in straight line with each other at full draw. So this will, by definition, always be true. It doesn't take any thought on your part if you're drawing correctly. Drawing correctly means that when you're drawing, you want to think about pulling your elbow backward. Don't think about pulling your hand, because if you're pulling your hand, you're going to start engaging your biceps or your triceps to move it. Those are weak muscles. The muscles that you want to use to draw a bow are your lats. These things right here that run along the side of your spine and up your shoulders. Those are super strong muscles, and those are the muscles that you use to pull a bow. Even for relatively weak bows, you'll be a stable, cleaner, stronger, straighter shooter who can shoot all day long with good endurance if you're using your strong muscles to pull the bow, which is your lats. This feels a little counterintuitive when you first hear it, because you often think of I'm pulling with my right hand or with my draw hand, and I'm pushing with my left hand. But it's a mistake to think about your bow hand pushing the bow. Those are weak muscles, and you're going to have bad balance. What you want to think about doing is setting your bow and then pulling with the shoulder, with the lat of your bow side, of your bow hand. And that pulling is going to counteract the tension of your draw arm, and basically both arms are going to be both shoulders are going to be pulling in balance with each other to keep the bow open. Maybe I'll show you a shot from behind, but I've got my bow arm set, and I'm going to rotate my shoulders in toward each other, which is going to open up the bow. I saw this cool shot once of one of my favorite archers, Justin Ma, so I'll try it also. I don't know if that man is right-handed or left-handed, but because he shoots pretty ambidextrously, which is a good idea. You should learn to shoot ambidextrously. This is not a heavy bow. Tell you what, I'm gonna get my next bow up here. It's a little bit bigger, and it can draw farther. Maybe I'll get a better shot. Check there we go. All looks good. Got a nice farmer's hand there. Alright, so let's see. Should have a nice compression of my back muscles right now. I have no idea if that showed anything or not, but that should give you an idea of the muscles you're using are the muscles in your back. Those are the ones that are drawing the bow here. Those are your back muscles engaging. If you want a better example of that, look up Justin Ma, or his channel is called The Way of Archery. The video is called The Draw. The Way of Archery, The Draw. So now I'm going to move the camera behind me a little bit, and I want to show you something. This arrow is sticking straight into the target. This is one of the things that you're going to be learning to do properly by shooting at very short distances, that you might not be able to do if you're shooting farther away. When your arrow leaves your bow, this is very different with horse bows than it would be in Western archery. When your arrow leaves your bow, it should be traveling dead straight. It should not look like this, nock right, or definitely not like that. That almost can't happen with the horse bow, but it shouldn't look like this. Your bow is leaving kind of like swerving and fishtailing on the way to the target. You got a problem. Take out my ring. So here's what's happening. This is called the archer's paradox. The archer's paradox is that when you draw an arrow to full draw and have it, look at me. Get my fiberglass bow, since this is an episode about fiberglass bows. You draw an arrow and it's on target. This thing's so much easier to draw. And you release it. There we go. The arrow will fly in the direction it's pointed, even though that seems impossible, because as the string collapses back to brace height, the arrow gets pushed off course. The angle here is really bad, I think. Try it like this. This is kind of cool. So my arrow's pointed to the side here. As I draw it, though, it's on target. Don't release. But when you release it, it wants to go sideways again, because the arrow pass is in the way. Makes sense. That's the paradox. Because when you actually shoot an arrow, it doesn't do that. It goes straight. How is that possible? It's a paradox. But it does happen. But it doesn't do that willingly. There's different ways to make this happen smoothly, but it always happens. But when you're first learning with a horsebow, what will probably happen is that the arrow will do what's called arrow slap, and the back of the arrow will strike the arrow pass, and then do this. And then the arrow will correct course and fly straight. This is bad. You lose a lot of kinetic energy when that happens, and accuracy and so on. A little side note, in Western archery, what they do is they design the arrow to be really flexible and bendy, which is sort of a silly cheat, but it does work. And what happens is when you shoot the arrow, it actually like bends and it wobbles its way around the arrow pass so that it never actually touches the arrow pass. That requires like precisely designing your arrow to be exactly flexible enough. They didn't have this luxury 1,000 years ago, so nobody did that. But with traditional or horsebow archery, the answer is very simple. How you make your arrow fly straight with no, how do you avoid arrow slap? This is arrow slap when your arrow strikes the arrow pass and gets whacked sideways. Counterintuitive, by the way. You would think that like the arrow leaving this way would strike nock left. That never happens. With horsebows, what happens is you get arrow slap and the arrow flies this way. This is an exaggeration. But you don't want that. You want the arrow to leave your bow going straight. And here's the magic, which is that it's all in the technique. And the technique is this technique of drawing the bow with your shoulders. What that means is that when you are at full draw, your bow hand is exerting a pressure in this direction, a backward pressure on the bow. And if at the moment of release you are exerting pressure with both of your shoulders and pulling back and slowly expanding your draw, this is called an expanding release, and this is proper when shooting a horsebow. If you don't do this, you will get arrow slap. Expanding release means that you're exerting pressure on the bow in this direction at the moment of release. And what happens is, as you release, the bow moves out of the way. That's it. That's the story. When you release your arrow with an expanding release, the bow gets out of the way. Let me see if I can do this without like making myself look stupid. This is such a weak bow that you can't tell. Let me get my better bow. And you need to stand farther away so we don't have a disaster. You may be wondering about my target over there. It's homemade. It's stuffed with green coffee bags. It will withstand thousands and thousands of shots and then can be restuffed. Alright, so this is going to be an expanding release. It was not perfect. My release was not expanding enough. Let's try again. That was terrible. Now you're seeing the cool thing about horsebows is that technique is so important. With Western shooting, you refine your equipment, which gives you better effect. But with horsebows, you refine your technique and your strength. That's a bit better. All those are a little bit knock right. Maybe I'm not full draw. Maybe I'm not expanding properly. You'll have to help me diagnose my shooting here. That's a little bit embarrassing. The other great thing with this target is the arrows come right out. Alright, we got one more shot. This is for all the marbles. Maybe I'll just cut this video and not show you all these bad shots. What do you think? I'm actually having too much fun doing this. I just packed this target. It sounds so good when you shoot into it. Bam! I don't know. I need more work. But this is not a deficiency in my equipment. It does not matter what arrow I'm shooting here. I can shoot a stiffer arrow, a more wobbly arrow, flexible. It's called spine, is how much like wobbliness the arrow has, or flexibility. With horsebows, always select the stiffest spine you can. And then if your arrow is not leaving the bow straight, your release is not good. So my release was not good. Let's see. So that was, oh, one more thing. You probably noticed when I released that my bow did this thing with the string. This is a side effect of this expanding release. It's called khatra. I don't know what language that is, but it can also be a way to help get your arrow around the bow, because it's actually pushing the arrow to the side. See that? So that it won't slap the string. Some people will use like a very strong khatra and like really torque the bow and try to make it rotate. Okay, so that arrow went very straight. It also sank in farther. That, by the way, shooting your arrow straight makes it go in deeper, and having a stiffer spine makes your arrow go in deeper. So if your objective is to kill people that are wearing armor, you want your arrow to fly straight, which is why you need to have good technique. That was a better shot. Maybe I need to make sure that my khatra is happening. Which on that shot I intentionally torqued the bow a little bit harder, along with my expanding release. And got a better shot. Now just do that 1,000 more times. Final notes. You should learn to shoot both hands. I'm not shooting my left hand right now because I have a little tiny cut on my thumb. You should learn to shoot both hands. Let me do a little bit of a speed shooting demonstration. Let's see. Let me show you back quiver speed shooting. Back quivers were used a little bit in history, but not as much as people think these days. But I like a back quiver, so. And it's also just kind of the quiver I got when I was first starting, and it fits on your back, and it works great for me. So I use a back quiver, or that's what I practice with. I don't own any other quivers. One day I'll get like a cool hip one or something. You grip the arrow without looking, and you grab it such that you're holding it like this, not like that, but like this, with your index finger on the bottom and your thumb on top, which is, at least once you rotate it, will be that way. And you flip it forward, grab it with your bow hand, and slide it backward until the nock slides the string. It takes a lot of practice to do that. And during that slide, you're going to switch around to the Slavic. So let's see. Onto the bow, onto the string, pull back into the Slavic. Modern Slavic, modified Slavic, fancy Slavic, speech Slavic. I don't know what it's called. Now I'm going to give you this demonstration, but unfortunately most of my arrows are going to fall on the floor because this is a weak bow and this is a really sturdy target. But let's try it anyway. I'm not going to go super fast. You don't need to come all the way to full draw here. You can. Safer not to draw too far when you're fast shooting because you don't want to overdraw. One more back there. All right. And then if they're all stuck neatly in the target, you can just collect them. Takes mere moments, as you can see. Drop them back in your quiver. Hello? Alright. Straighten them out. Drop them in your quiver. And you can go again. This is how you can shoot a couple hundred arrows in 10 minutes. It's not the best for improving your form, but it's pretty fun. Try not to hit your own arrows, so aim at spots where there is no arrow. You don't want to break your own arrow, that's not cool. They're expensive. I think that's enough of your first horsebow demonstration. Oh. When you're done shooting, unstring your bows. It's more important with bows made out of natural materials, but it's still important for bows made out of modern materials. Really, it's painless and only takes a moment. Just like that. I like to loop the ends over both sias and just sort of wrap it like that and put it back on the rack. I do want to show off this beautiful pretty bow. So if you want to upgrade to another bow, this is made by a company called Bow. It's gorgeous. Mostly modern materials. This is a layer of clear fiberglass. Actually tell that it's modern materials because historical horsebow like this would be covered in leather or something so that you can't see the wood because it keeps it protected. But here we can protect it with fiberglass because we have modern marvels. clear fiberglass. There's a layer of like bamboo and then maple and then something else is in there. Um, this bow weighs. This bow is like 600 grams and has a like whatever its draw weight and draw length are. This bow weighs 500 grams, has a longer draw weight, a longer draw length, higher draw weight, much more efficiency. You get much more kinetic energy and enjoyment and accuracy and straightness, and it's just beautiful and fun to wield. Has these cool like bone and horn inlays all over it. Fabulous work of art, basically made by a fairly small company in China called Horsebow. Can't recommend Horsebow enough. There's their little tag there. You'll notice it says, this is great. 28 inches at 40. 28 inches, 40 pounds. This is what they tested at the factory. 35 inches, 56 pounds. Now they say this is only recommended to draw 33 inches, which is like 83 centimeters. But evidently at the factory they drew it to 90 centimeters. So maybe I should too. I don't even have any arrows that long. I have some 88 centimeter arrows. I don't really want to draw it that far. I should try it sometime. Try my 88 centimeter arrows with it. This is a beautiful Chinese style bow by Horsebow. It's gorgeous. It's called the Zhangwu. Fabulous. And this is a plastic bow made by a French company called Arc Roll-On, I think, called the Snake. You can get it for like $40, made out of plastic. It's a great little introductory bow to show your friends how to shoot. It has a little arrow shelf, but at least it's ambidextrous. Has little like working recurves on it. It's kind of cool. I never shoot it, but if I have friends over who've never shot before, I might let them shoot the Snake. And this is made by a company called Daylight. Well, at least their North American branch is called Daylight. It's a Korean style traditional bow, although it's made out of like massive space age, information age materials like carbon fiber and whatever else is in there. But this thing is a complete monster. It draws to about 48 kilograms at my draw length. I can barely pull it, so I'm still practicing this bow. It's a monster, but it only weighs 400 grams. It's so lightweight and really efficient and powerful. This thing can launch arrows, probably lethal at 300 meters or something. This is a terrifying weapon of war. Every bit as powerful as the heavy English longbows from the late medieval period. This thing's insane. All right, that's it. That's your introduction to horsebows. Have fun.